Everything we know about Hallmark, it has been about that emotional connection, the authenticity we get when we watch those movies, when we read those cards. In today's marketplace, it's so noisy, it's so fast paced. How can B2B brands start to build those relationships? After COVID, I saw a big change. B2B brands used to be very stoic, but people weren't looking just for product information. They wanted to connect with the brand. They wanted to hear the stories about the brand. And that's when, as marketers, we had to change. No longer could we just talk about ourselves or talk about our products. We now needed to speak to our target audience about what they wanted to hear. You had to start to form real relationships with these people, relationships that instilled trust.
Before we jump in, your host is Donna Peterson, and you are listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence and AI podcast. We come to you every week with actionable tips and suggestions that can help you be more efficient, create better marketing plans, and be a salesperson that really closes those leads.
There's a big learning curve for a lot of B2B brands to do that. But that is why I am so excited about my guest today. One, he's from Hallmark, so don't get me started on the Hallmark Christmas movies. You all know how much I love those. But the other reason is I'm going to be talking with Patrick McCullough, who is the president of Hallmark Business Connection. He is on the B2B side, and he is going to tell us about building those relationships. How do we deepen those relationships so that we instill trust, but we also create loyal customers, we have loyal employees and vendors. So let's jump in and hear his expert advice. Hi, Patrick. How are you today?
Good, Donna. How are you?
Good. Very excited to have you on so many different levels here.
Happy to be here.
I wanted to jump in. Obviously, Hallmark, a legacy brand. Yes, we know the Hallmark movies, but the Hallmark movies, the Hallmark greeting cards, everything we know about Hallmark, it has been about that emotional connection, the authenticity we get when we watch those movies, when we read those cards. In today's marketplace, it's so noisy, it's so fast paced. How can B2B brands start to build those relationships?
It's a great question. Again, thank you for having me on. And this is a topic that's near and dear to our heart, not just because this is what we do. We help our clients build better relationships with their customers and their employees, but also at the end of the day, at Hallmark Business Connections, we are a B2B business. We are selling Hallmark products and services in many ways to other types of businesses and trying to help them accomplish their goals. When I think about authenticity and noise in today's space, the funny thing about it is authenticity matters more today than it ever has before. And I can tell you just as a proof positive, Hallmark Business Connections business is larger today than it has ever been in the past. And in fact, over the last 5 to 10 years, we've almost doubled in size because more and more customers, whether they be relatively small to medium-sized businesses and all the way up to very large enterprises, are trying to think about ways that they can break through. It doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C, and to your point, whether you're building a relationship with a customer or with an employee, authenticity and emotional marketing and connection is the differentiator, right? And if you want to show up differently in your customers or employees' lives, that's how you have to do it. You have to show up as a human being, or if you will, you have to show up for them in the way that they're used to interacting. And it's so hard to do that in a digital space. I know wonderful digital marketers who do it quite well, but there's something about being able to do it in different types of formats, different types of mediums, such as a Hallmark card, which, as you can imagine, is one of the things that we do with our customers all the time.
Yeah. I have so many things I want to ask you from your statement just then, but let's start with the Hallmark card. I will tell you, after every guest I have on the show, I've always written a handwritten note and I send them a little gift. Hope that wasn't a spoiler alert, but one will be coming your way. But I have to tell you, those handwritten notes have gotten, I can't even tell you the comments. I've had people take pictures of the handwritten notes, post them on social media. I've had people saying, boy, she does it right. It's amazing how much of a response I've gotten from the handwritten notes. And I know with some of my clients, I'm always pushing them about, let's get back out into the mail because you would be surprised how much people really want to get it. And I'm starting to see from vendors sending me thank you notes. Thank you very much for those orders.
Exactly. And to be honest with you, I'm not at all surprised to hear that story
Yeah.
because it's what we live every single day. Our customers tell us every single day that quantitatively and qualitatively, the work that we do matters. I'll tell you a funny anecdote that you'll appreciate. We had a client once who was sending out thank you cards to some of their very best customers, and they were doing it at scale, think in hundreds of thousands or millions. And they didn't quite know what they were going to get back. We did warn them that when you send someone a Hallmark card, they do tend to want to send one back. It's kind of part of the cultural promise we have. But they got back hundreds and hundreds of pieces of mail from their customers. And funny enough, actually, one of them was a veteran who had said, "Thank you so much. This is one of the few pieces of correspondence I've had all year long." And he had sent back a small gift for this. Again, it was a retail merchant, right? Someone who runs a component in a retail store. And that what can you do in today's world to have that kind of emotional engagement with a customer, right? From that kind of distance, there's very few things. But trying to build that relationship is the right first step. And it's the kind of thing that even if you think it might just go, oh, they'll never see it or oh, they won't care. The
Yeah.
truth is, and you know this, and I know this, and my customers, as an example, know this, it does make a difference. And when you make the effort over time, eventually those messages and the intention behind them breaks through. And it's absolutely true in the B2B space. It's not just about the broader consumer world. If you
Mhm.
have a relationship with, as a vendor, with the company that you're serving, and it's not just that we provide you widgets at a better price, but it's that we are going to be here for you. I, Patrick, am going to be here for you, Donna. That makes a difference over time in a competitive landscape. It's been true for decades, as I'm sure as you said,
Yes.
you've experienced. Yeah.
No, you're right. And I have to tell you, sir, I just wrote a thank you note to the gentleman who was caretaking of my mother's house. I wrote him a thank you note and he stopped me and he says, that was such a pretty note. I'm going to keep it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I know there's companies out there when they send the thank you, people hold on to them for a while. And as this world seems to get crazier and crazier, I think you're right. We really do want to work with those companies that we connect with, that we can create this meaningful connection because then it's not just work. I don't
Right.
know if that makes sense. When you start to build a relationship with the people, it's as if you're going to meet your sister or your brother at the coffee shop instead of just, oh, okay, yeah, I just bought that widget or I bought that HPLC machine. No, you start to really develop the relationship, which creates a more meaningful life.
I'll tell you a funny story and hopefully bring this home for your listeners. In our business, Hallmark Business Connections, our sales cycle, if you will, is oftentimes quite elongated. When we're working with clients, they don't necessarily sign on the bottom line on day one for our various products and services. Sometimes it takes a good amount of time to sell in the value proposition, find the budget, right? All the things that I
Yes.
know you're used to. But our team recently, and they were working with a customer who we've been trying to get into their business and build a deeper partnership. And we found out that our point of contact, their dog had died, the dog that they'd had for many years, and that they were going to be out of the office for a while working through that. And what did we think? As relationship-based B2B marketers and sales teams, we said, okay, we're going to send them a card, a condolences card, a pet sympathy card, as we call it in the Hallmark world, and just say that we're thinking about you, right?
Yeah.
Love your Hallmark team. It was a very simple note. A few weeks later, actually, I think it was a few months later, we heard back from that client partner said, "Hey, by the way, I wanted to tell you that I got this and that it meant so much to me. And honestly, it had such an impact on me. I haven't been able to write you a note back about it because it was
Uh,
such a meaningful thing to get. And that I put the card that you sent me along with all of the dogs and memorabilia and all the different memories into their little memory box when we decided to bury her and move on." And it's just this incredible thought. This, again, if I wanted to be very narrow minded about it, this is a vendor client relationship, right? This is someone who's wanting to buy products and services, but it's more than that because we took the opportunity to say we want it to be more than that. And so now, again, maybe they will buy something from us this year. In fact, I think they will. But even if they didn't, that individual knows we are desiring of that kind of partnership with them. And of course, we still need to provide great products and services, and it needs to provide ROI. All of that stuff is always true,
Right.
but they also know that we want to be a different kind of vendor than someone that they're going to get down the block. And I firmly believe, because we've seen it time and time again, that it's going to make the difference.
Well, because now they know you're truly going to be there. You're not going to
Right.
just get the order and you're going to disappear. Patrick's going to be gone. No, you're going to be there. And when you send these notes, going back to your point about people have to be authentic. And I think Simon Sinek talked about this once where the real estate broker sold his house and they sent him a thank you note. Thank you very much for the listing. And but then they didn't stop there. They gave a sales pitch underneath. And I'm like, no, send just a nice thank you note because you're thankful. You're not trying to get more business.
Makes all the difference in the world.
Definitely be authentic. Several of my legacy brands, I work with a lot of companies who are 75 to 100 years old, family owned, so it's generational, but it comes from the top. They're like, we're a legacy brand. We don't have to do branding. And I wanted to hear from you. What would be your response to these top executives as they say, we don't need to do branding?
It's an interesting question as a legacy brand. And frankly, as the leader of a business that works with many legacy brands, we work primarily with the Fortune 1000, although we work with plenty of small and medium-sized businesses as well, but plenty of companies that have been around and have been household names for generations. Unfortunately, maybe this is a bit of a departure from what most of those brands might want to hear. I think the truth is that the era of brand is probably coming to an end. And in the digital kind of ecosystem that we're living in today, there's going to be a significant amount of competition. And yes, that means room for greater arrays of differentiation. It used to be there were only a few lanes of differentiation that any business might have, and brand was one of the biggest ones. Coca-Cola
Oh,
was Coca-Cola, right? You
right,
weren't having
right.
a soda or a pop unless you're from Minnesota or the Midwest. You were having a Coke, right? And those things mattered. That's going to become less and less true in the outgoing years. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that brand doesn't matter. So, as what we find all the time in our business and what Hallmark knows is that Hallmark as a brand brings with it several points of credibility and trust that helps to open the door to an important relationship. And I think the brands that you probably work with who maybe have built a brand within their community, as an example, that is still going to be true going forward. It's still going to be a really important leg of the stool, if you will, that they need to have in their strategy. But to your point, it's not just about that.
Right.
They also have to go out and stand for intentionally what they want their brand to be known for. And they have to have that kind of communication stance. They have to put that out in the world. They have to live it, right, every single day. Otherwise, that competitive angle is going to drift away. And then, yes, of course, all of our businesses are going to need to learn to differentiate on other types of kind of strategic planes. And as we talked about, obviously, having a personal relationship with your customers and your employees is one of those really strong areas, a differentiation that many businesses, but especially in the B2B space, these folks have found to be significant points of differentiation over time. But what do you think when you talk with brands today and you tell them where their strategy needs to go?
I agree with everything you're saying when you're talking about branding. And I even like to step away from branding, lead generation, marketing to relationship building. Everything a brand does, everything we put out there should be trying to build a relationship by offering value, by giving, but telling our unique story. When it comes to B2B marketing companies, there's a billion of them. But are they 44 years old? Are they family owned? Are they woman owned? Are they working in the industrial space? And as you start to come down, your competitive pool per se gets smaller. But I also feel when you get your unique story out there in the marketplace, when you do those unique gestures by sending that card if someone's dog passed away, telling a caretaker what a wonderful job they did with a very detailed, caring note, you're not going to have competition.
That's a great point. And just to reinforce it, At Hallmark Business Connections, most of the small and medium-sized businesses that we work with are in this kind of, let's call it manufacturing or services industry broadly. Plumbers, lumber supply companies, right? Local trade unions, nurseries, right? In your local community that are family owned. And this is what they have found over time, exactly what you
Yes.
just said. And their ability to build personal relationships, to build that point of differentiation has become their entire right, kind of foundation of their business strategy. There are plenty of other elements, like you said. This is what they're doing every single day. I remember meeting many years ago with a printing company, the CEO of a printing company who was I think he was on the third generation. And we were talking about the different things that you can do to continue to differentiate your business. And we were talking about exactly this, building
Yes.
relationships. And I remember he said, I build relationships all the time. I go out and I talk to my customers. My customers know me personally, right? I said, I'm sure that is true, number one.
Yeah.
But what if you took it one step further, right? What if you went and cemented those personal relationships with this one additional unexpected touch point? And the truth is, he came back years later and told us he had adopted that practice and it had made a meaningful difference, not for his top customers who did know him personally,
Yeah.
but for that second or third decile of customers that maybe didn't work quite as often with them or maybe considered sending work to other vendors from time to time. It made a difference for them. They came around more often. It's just such an important component.
Yeah. And especially if you have those companies you work with all the time and you are loyal, but you send that note. I'm sorry, they're at a dinner party, and if it's something that really cracked them up, or they're going to repeat the story, and you get that ripple effect from this one note that you sent. And I agree. I think over the years, I've been in marketing for over 30 years, and the terms keep changing, but the core is still the same. And it was both my parents worked in this company. My mother founded it 44 years ago, and then my father joined 2 years later. But both of them had different ways of handling things, but it was always about building that relationship and just being totally honest with the client and doing everything we possibly could to help them succeed. And that hasn't changed. Our mission is to inspire success.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, at the end of the day, as we wrap up this topic, I think what I often remind people of, and they're trying to figure out, what does this mean? Tell me tangibly how I can do this, right? How I can apply this. The one overarching theme that I tend to remind folks of is that if, to your very accurate point, which is that every generation does like to change the definitions of the same strategy.
Yes.
What do we all want at the end of the day? Just like in our relationships, family and
Mhm.
friends, etc., we want people to meet us where we are in all different ways, shapes, and forms. The same is true in business.
Yes.
We, customers and vendors, they want folks to meet them where they are and build those partnerships. And I think I shouldn't say no one, but very few people are interested in living a life that's not full of rich and powerful and interesting relationships. So that's where we should start.
You're right. It's not transactional anymore. It is about just developing those relationships. And when I talk to people about it, I said, think about, how do you build your personal relationships? You go to that soccer field, you're talking to someone, the conversation starts. Do you automatically become best friends? No. November of 2022, we were catapulted into this whole new area of AI. And as I mentioned, I train and I speak on ChatGPT and AI tools. Do you feel these AI tools can really help us strengthen these relationships, or do you think it's going to hurt us in the long run?
I maybe have a nuanced take on this, having this is front of mind for me, and as I'm sure it is for everyone who's listening,
Yeah.
to make sure that we stay in at the forefront of all these evolutions that we're seeing in our technologies and our business strategies and our workplaces. I have two thoughts for our business and for your clients and customers and folks who are listening. Number one is to embrace it.
Yeah.
Just every other wave of innovation has come before. No one profited in the long run by saying, I'm going to ignore that. It doesn't mean you have to adopt everything, doesn't mean you have to fundamentally change every corner of your business, but you need to lean in.
Yes.
As that's what we're doing in our business every day. We're thinking about applications, use cases. The terminology these days is agents, right? How many AI agents are we going to have in our workplace that can help us be better and more efficient?
Yeah.
We're looking at all of those and we're embracing them. And we're saying, let's make sure that we get the best use out of this. The other side of it, though, I was just at a Gartner conference, a data and intelligence
Yes.
kind of company, consulting firm. The conference was primarily focused on sales, business development, marketing, these kinds of things. And I found it interesting. The topic was only about AI. Like that,
Mhm.
everyone, every vendor, every keynote, you couldn't talk more than two sentences without using those two initials right next to each other.
Sure.
Um, and the thing that I did think was a little bit concerning for me in a lot of the different messaging, but not all, was that it seemed to imagine that we were going to fully remove human relationships from the loop. I think it's possible that many companies are, especially in the B2C world, are
Yeah.
going to go that way. And they're going to choose to let their consumers only self-serve with some type of a
Mhm.
digital storefront and digital agents instead of the brand being more human represented in many different ways, shapes, and fashions. I don't bemoan that strategy, but in the B2B space, having talked with a lot of people in this space recently, as an example, from a business development and marketing perspective, folks still want to know who they're working with,
Yes.
not a brand or a tagline, but the people. There's going to be tons of AI in the loop as we still go
Yes.
out and try to run our B2B businesses, and that's a good thing. But the human connection is still going to matter. And it's funny, even I was walking the floor and talking with some of the latest and greatest tech startups and who are in the AI space, who of course have business development representatives, human beings
Mhm.
standing out in front selling their solution. And I said, do you ever think about like your job going away? You ever worry that you're creating the product that's going to take your position? And consistently, all of them say no. And I know why, because I lived this experience, which is that again, their customers at the end of the day want to build a
Yeah.
connection with a real human being before they make a major purchase. That is the essence of B2B business at the end of the day. And I see it from big companies like SAP working with Hallmark to very small vendors who provide different types of supplies to our company. At the end of the day, the connection still matters. I think that is going to be true. And it's going to be an area for differentiation and strategic imperative for most B2B businesses for a long time.
I agree. I think a lot of companies, we still want to deal with the human. The AI is definitely going to help us get some of those tasks done. I think the biggest area concerns me the most is the people who are thinking AI is great and it can now spit out all this content, and they're leaving this content generic and they're just copying and pasting it out there instead of, as we talk about building a relationship, if you want to use these AI tools to deepen these relationships, you need that human involvement to do that critical thinking to make those messaging resonate with that individual on a deep level.
Yeah, absolutely. And frankly, that's one of those things that we have really tried to corner the market on here at Hallmark, right? We
Yes.
think a lot about how our art and the editorial that we develop for our customers and their different types of marketing campaigns are really humanly centered, right?
Yes.
And that and frankly, there will probably come a day where even our artisans at Hallmark are using AI to
Mhm.
help us work more efficiently and to be more streamlined. But the ability to write that unique human note and to make it sound and feel like and literally be like it's written from one person to another,
Yes.
that still is, I think, very much a human task, right? At the end of the day, that we see that as a clear point of differentiation in our business. Our customers don't come to us and say, I'd love for you to make me a Hallmark card, but I don't want it written by Hallmark editorial writers with hundreds of years of experience
Yeah.
cumulatively. No, of course they do. That is the essence of
Right.
what they're looking for.
Thanks for listening to the B2B Marketing Excellence and AI podcast with your host, Donna Peterson. Make sure you subscribe to our channels via socials and subscribe to stay up to date with new podcasts whenever they come out. Stay tuned for part 2 of this episode, coming out mid-July.